al atardecer, reviviendo lo mejor de ayer. Nuestras manos dando un blanco en el momento, sonando, sonando todo. Más amor, more, more. Por allá. Más amor, more, more. Más amor, more, love. Más amor, more, love. Más amor, more, love.
So we're about to start with the sound check. Everything's already plugged in at the moment. The keys are ready, drums almost ready, guitars and bass. So our drummer is gonna come in a second and we're gonna start with that. As always, we always start with the bass drum, snare, toms, cymbals, then the whole set, then the backing tracks, and then we move on to the bass, guitars, keys, vocals. The idea of a soundcheck is first to get the levels of each signal right. So you can maybe hear in the back the drummer is kicking the drum pedal so that our engineer can set up his gain and then EQ for the room. So that is done for each signal, for each channel, meaning each instrument. So bass drum, snare, hi-hat, overheads, for example, bass, guitar, keyboards, and so on and so on. You want to set the levels and then EQ for the room and to make everything sound together. So for this reason, it's important to do it in order and to provide the signal to the engineer, or provide a signal to the engineer that is similar to the dynamics that you're gonna have while playing live as well. So you don't want to play too soft during soundcheck, because then once the whole show starts and you start hitting the strings harder, for example, your level is going to be higher, so he's going to have to adjust too much. So you want to play like at the loudest level as you can, so the engineer can set up his levels correctly. You also want to provide to the sound engineer a good signal, meaning if you over EQ, then the person doing the sound for the room is going to have to fight your EQ. If you send a signal that's like too flat, that's actually not a problem, because if you send a direct signal, then the engineer can EQ and make it sound good for the room. So there's actually nothing wrong with sending a clean, completely just bass into a DI box to front of house. That's actually what most likely most engineers prefer, because people sometimes, or I don't like to generalize, but most of the time tend to over EQ if you don't know what you're doing. A bit of EQ here and there is fine, but just doing like really broad things usually is not a good idea unless you already work with a sound engineer and the person knows what you're going for, or you really know how your bass sits in the music of your band. But generally speaking, providing a completely flat signal is actually a very good way to proceed. I do add a little bit of EQ here and there, not much, but because I know how my bass should sound or sit in different songs. So for this reason, I have a little bit of bass boost here and there, a bit of a treble boost here and there. I have my distortion, my compression, and so on. But I haven't heard any bass or any sound engineer complain by you providing them a good clean signal. And a good clean signal is also dependent on your DI box. So having a good quality DI is also important. Of course, you can do fine with a cheap $30 DI box, but investing a little bit even into like $100 one, like a radial DI, is really good. There are other ones that also already add some more flavor that can help you to sit better in a mix. For example, the Noble, of course, Caveman and so on. There are many great DIs, but providing a clean signal is most of the time is the way to go, unless you know really how the bass should fit in the mix. And even then, I wouldn't over EQ, because you have to let the engineer adjust for the room, because you're not in front of the audience, you're on stage, and the way things sound on stage is very different. Now, we also use in-ear monitors. So in this case, for example, I run my mix in this way. We have backing tracks, we have drums, keys, guitar, bass, and vocals. We have 4 vocals, plus some things to fill up in the backing tracks. So the way I do it to avoid cluttering my ears is that I have myself fairly loud so that I can hear what I'm playing. I also have my bass amp to feel the bass on stage. I also have the lead singer's vocals at I would say medium level, not too high, not too low, but a medium level. I don't like pushing him too high, because otherwise things get caught and bleed from the microphone. I don't have any other vocals on my mix, just the lead singer, the background vocals I don't need to hear. I have a backing track also at the medium level, so that I can hear the countings and where I am on the track. I don't have any drums. Sometimes blend in a little bit of a hi-hat, but not really much, because I am already standing next to the drummer. I have guitar also at a medium level, keys fairly low, because the signal of the keyboard is fairly loud, so I don't need much to hear him. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, I mute all the other vocals, because that just introduces noise of the stage. And I don't have the drum mics, because that also introduces noise from the stage, and I'm standing next to the drummer, so I don't need to have that on my mix.